Hi, welcome to the Phil Cooke podcast. This is Phil Cooke, and today we've got a really interesting episode. I'm going to be interviewing an old friend. He's been on before, Ralph Winter. Now, you know Ralph probably from producing a career of $200 million plus films like X-Men, Wolverine, Planet of the Apes, Star Trek, on and on and on and on. Well, more recently, Ralph's been involved with the Sphere in Las Vegas. Now, a lot of people have asked me, this gigantic dome in the middle of Las Vegas, it's gotten a lot of press. It's made some real ripples out there, and people are noticing. And Ralph has been working with them for some time, and now he's leading the charge with producing all the entertainment and the media, the filming that goes on inside. So I've had so many people ask me about, what's Ralph's update and what's he doing and how's the Sphere. I wanted him to come on and just give you a little background about what's going on, what they're producing, how they produce it. It's going to be a great episode, so stay tuned. Ralph Winter, thanks for being a part of the podcast. You've been on before. We've been friends for a long time, but this is a whole new capacity, so thanks for coming back.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's fun to be a part of it, and I love talking to you. You have a great perspective on things, so this will be fun.
Well, that's very good. Well, you know what? You spent most of your career making $200 million movies. And, except for maybe Captain Ron, that might be an exception, but X-Men, Wolverine, Planet of the Apes, Star Trek, on and on and on. But now you've switched gears. And the reason I really wanted you back is to talk about the new project. You've been working with the Sphere in Las Vegas. People that have heard of it know that, well, as far as I can tell, it's about as cutting edge technology as you could possibly think of. And, how did you get involved with those guys, and how's this shift happened for you, and how's it working?
Sure. So I'm not exactly sure how they found me, but I've been consulting with them since 2018. And they first came to me and said, they're thinking about this, and described, a little bit about the Sphere. And I said, so have you guys been to soaring over California and Disney? And they go, no. I go, well, you should do that because it feels very similar to me in terms of what you want to do. You want to sort of go and experience something different. And then I said, well, you're going to set up something in Burbank, and you got to have a camera, and you got to figure this out. And, Disney's done a lot of this over the years with, I don't know if you remember, you and I are probably the only ones old enough to remember the Circle Vision. That was at Disney, and they used to fly in a helicopter or a plane and a bunch of cameras. They'd stitch it together, and then you'd feel like you were in a 360 flying over clouds or mountains or whatever. And I said, where are you going to? Oh, we'll do all that in Vegas when we build this facility. And it was like, okay, well, no one's going to go to Vegas to make a deal or see that stuff. So I sort of forgot about them and pushed them off, and they kept coming after me. And so between all the big movies and travel around the world, I spend like a day a week consulting and testing and trying to help them get started. And after I did Hocus Pocus 2, they sort of prevailed on me to come in and spend more time. And I just think it's potentially the future of what entertainment's about, because it's not just about cinema. It's not just about watching something, but rather being transported somewhere, that it's taking you to some place that you've never been before. And that's interesting to me. And it is sort of a bit of theatrical skills that you need, of what you might experience on a Broadway theater, as well as cinematic. And so it combines some things. It's new, it's different. We've made mistakes, but we're trying, and the results are really fun. And I think the future's unlimited for this kind of venue-based entertainment. So
now for people that have never been, we're not talking about 90-minute feature films here. How long is the typical experience?
Well, it's interesting. At the beginning, again, we went to all of the sort of immersive rides at the theme parks, and almost to every one of them is no longer than 5 or 6 minutes, because they're intense. You're moving around, there's smells, there's sounds, there's wind, there's hot, there's cold, and it's intense. as well as all the theme parks want to drive through as many people as possible. But
Right.
and there's even some warnings on some of those that, this may be too intense, and there's a lesser version of it on Mission to Mars or the moon or
Yeah.
whatever they got it. So we weren't really sure. And on the first show, just to make it worthwhile to come into the building, it doesn't make any sense to come in for 5 minutes, the
Right.
logistics of getting in and out of a building. So it's a little less than an hour. That's kind of our sweet spot. And we really didn't know if people would, you know, that's too much or too little. And it turns out it's pretty good. So we're sort of aiming at that 1 hour. But, people say, well, you should put movies in there. And, that's not the highest and best use. That's not what Jim Dolan,
Yeah.
who created this, wants to do. He wants experiences, wants to take you somewhere. There's no streaming there's no DVD there's no aftermarket. You come and experience it, and you got to come to a sphere to do that. So
Now, to make the experience high impact, you've been to some pretty exotic places in the world. Tell me a little bit about some of the locations you've been filming some of these things at.
well, uh, before I tell you that, I'll just tell you in terms of what we're displaying there.
Okay.
What we're displaying is a media plane that's all you know, LED, and it's 3.5 acres in size. That's the
Wow.
size of the screen that, and it dwarfs 10 or more times bigger than an IMAX screen. So it's massive. There's 164,000 speakers in the building. It's got haptics that move your seat, that
Yeah.
energize your seat. There's smell, there's wind, there's hot, there's cold. Uh, there's really a lot of things that sort of, all the senses to make you feel like you're in another place. And then some of the stuff we're watching, and you listen to the audience, a little boy tugging on his dad's shirt going, are we outside? Because it feels
That's
like,
great.
you might be in a different place. The resolution is 16K by 16K, and it's running at 60 frames a second. So it has that sort of hyper reality of that. When the U2 show opened, there's a spot at the beginning where it feels like the ceiling opens and a helicopter lets down a rope and is coming over top like the band's arriving.
Yeah.
And we've had people like Oprah came through to our Burbank test facility and said, "So how did you open the top of the building and then close it for the rest of the show?" I go, "We didn't do that." No, 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 no. I felt it. I was there. I could see it. No, we didn't do that.
That's
So
funny.
it's it's deceiving when you're inside of that, and we're sort of using that to our advantage. We were in 27 countries on the first one, which is a docu drama piece, 51 minutes. And our camera's about the size of an IMAX camera, and there's articles about it in the Wall Street Journal.
Now, wait, hold on a second. When you started, it was multiple cameras, wasn't it? Kind of put together?
Well, when we started, it was an array.
Okay.
So we'd use red cameras, Raptors, tie them together so that all the images are overlapping, and then you go in post-production and stitch it. But you can imagine even a
Yeah.
1 minute shot, 60 frames a second, is a lot of stitching and work. And so the
Yeah.
holy grail is to figure that out. And we did, and patented. And that's what that Big Sky camera is, the only camera in the world that can map that image properly on that large space at that resolution.
Wow.
So yeah, so we've taken that camera all over the world. We're trying new things. And part of what I was brought on to do was to help break it. How do we just try to move it too fast? Does that make you sick? You know, so
That's
we had
good.
fun sort of trying to break it and do that. And now it's really about how do we create compelling experiences that feel like you're in Africa on the savannah, that you're underwater, that you're on the side of a cliff climbing with somebody with no ropes and
Yeah.
scare the pants off you and feel like you're there, like you felt when you watched Free Solo with Alex Honnold.
How
So
much is that size of camera, that screen size, changing the way you shoot a film. I mean, there's not a lot of places for the
Oh,
crew to stand, right? Behind it.
oh yeah, it sees everything. That's the hardest part is getting out of the way of the camera. You're exactly right. You know this.
Wow.
Um, so it sees everything. It's a 165-degree wide sort of field of view, and the same up over your head. So you frame the camera differently. And everybody says, "Oh yeah, I know what you're doing." And everybody we bring in, you got to play with it. You got to
Yes.
rely on the sort of the team and experts that we have of how to frame, as well as how do you tell a story? You don't, with a big wide lens like that, you don't have two shots, singles, overs, close-ups. So I liken it to when you go to see Wicked or Hamilton, you're watching through one lens for 2 hours. You're on a row 38 and you're on a 20 millimeter lens. You're seeing a big wide.
Yep.
And how do you tell a story? Well, it still works. The music, the action happens, or a light goes on, or something happens that is sort of cutting, if you will, and telling the story. We're trying to combine those things with cinema, and it's challenging. It's really challenging
I bet.
to create something that, creates awe and inspiration and makes you feel like you're transported. I mean, that's the idea.
It's
So,
funny. I've been through a just a microscopic version of what you're talking about with a church that bought a satellite campus, and it was a movie theater. And so
oh,
they wanted to beam the pastor's message to this venue that was a movie theater. But when they did, I mean, the guy's gigantic. His close up is just huge. It was so awkward and uncomfortable. We decided to pull back and made it feel like it was a real person standing up there on stage. So it was a super
yeah,
wide shot, and he was small in the frame, but it made it more comfortable in a movie theater kind of a setting. And so
yeah.
that's a fragment of the thing. But you're right; it changes. When you change the platform like that, it changes everything.
We shot some tests, some portraits when we were in Thailand. We were at this exotic cave, hiking a mile inside the cave, back inside. Took 45 minutes just going in, taking all our gear, and 45 minutes getting out. And we shot
Wow.
some portraits while we were there, close up on this big camera. And when we came back to view it, it was astonishing because I'm standing right next to the camera. So I was
Yeah.
there when it was filmed. So I know that I saw the guy, I shook his hand, I knew what we were doing. When I saw the images back in our test facility, we have a place in Burbank, not as big, it's a quarter scale, but still 16K resolution. Suddenly I'm seeing red thread on his shirt where his wife or someone or he had repaired his polo shirt. And I saw little specks of paint that to my eye, when I was standing there, I didn't see it. But when it's that large and that sharp, and suddenly, you know, the hairs on his chin were like pipes coming out of his chin, it was like, oh man, I gotta shave differently. I gotta look at how and that's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
so that and it also, which was interesting, is that image of that person. He didn't know what we were doing, and he was looking
Yeah.
at us like, what is wrong with these people? And I
Yeah.
can feel that in looking at the image. You know how Native American Indians, talking about didn't want their picture taken because you're
Right.
stealing something, you're stealing their spirit. You could sort of see that because you're looking inside of a human face far closer than you're supposed to.
Wow.
And it was really, really interesting. So anyway, I think it's fun to play with all those things, trying to figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a 20,000 seat venue. So,
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
watching this with a lot of people. So the residencies are branding and, from U2 and
Yep.
Dead and Co. and Kenny Chesney opens in a week or so, Fish, Eagles.
So okay, let's go back. You two, Kenny Chesney, they'll be performing live on a stage in front of the screen, right? And then
Correct.
you shot stuff from behind the screen.
Well, we work with them and other vendors to help create that stuff that's behind them. And
Okay.
look, you can imagine, I don't know how many concerts you go to, but the high end Taylor Swift, Elton
Right.
John, they'll have, documentary of how they were kids and how they
Yep.
did things and they put it on the biggest flat screen they can afford at Dodger Stadium. And even at Dodger Stadium, it's not that large, right?
Right.
Now You can't take that 2K 1080 home video and blow it up to 16K. It's mush. So
Wow.
we're working with them to, yes, how do we photograph? And it's expensive for a 2 hour show. You can't just shoot a movie every couple of months. So there's other tools we're using with Unreal Engine and Notch and all sorts of software to create imagery and combine live action. It's really complicated. And you try to create a compelling show that now, as an artist, you've only been playing your music and maybe you have a light show that comes around and points at people and smoke and fire. Well, now you can't have a big black screen behind you. You got to figure out how
Yeah.
you're going to tell stories and augment your songs, poems, work with some visual aspect to that. That's not just you know uh, a background, but
Yeah.
you want it to be immersive. You want it to help take you somewhere when you sing around. I don't know. I'm making it up. You sing around
Yeah.
Margaritaville. What's in the background that makes you feel that or
Yeah.
smell that or you know? So that's the challenge, and that's you know as everybody's trying to bring more value to movie theaters or streaming or the creator economy and TikTok and
Yeah.
all that. I think what we're trying to do in this venue based, I feel very privileged to work there, that it's interesting, it's challenging, it's hard.
Yeah.
Um, and we're trying to make a profit and that's hard. So but Vegas is interesting because there's just like this flow of people to come through that
Yeah.
are curious.
Yeah.
And so there's a deal to make another one in Abu Dhabi, and then Disney just announced they're putting another theme park in Abu Dhabi. So that part of the world, there was a failed attempt at London. London didn't want it. They thought it would be um, a problem. But the idea is to put these around the world and see what happens.
Well, now, so it's not just the inside; it's the outside too. I mean, people
Oh,
have seen pictures of the sphere as an eyeball or the sphere as a baseball.
oh
Tell me
yeah.
about that. How does that work?
That's a whole nother team. I'm only involved on the inside, but that's what's called our exosphere.
Wow.
And that's a different resolution and mapping because it's like an orange. You've got to sort of peel it apart and then reassemble it in that round.
Yeah.
And that opened before the inside. That opened on July
Oh,
1 of 23. I think we're coming up on 2 years now.
wow.
And that was an instant hit. I think it
I
surprised
bet.
all of us. That was like, this got a personality. This is people are fascinated. There's 15,000 hotel rooms that can see the exosphere, and
Um,
you can run ads. But it's interesting. Jim Dolan, who runs the company and invented this, doesn't want 100% ads. 50% is
yeah.
art. 50% is ads. So there's showcasing artists. There's student competitions in locally with Las Vegas. Uh, so it's really interesting and different. I don't you don't see anything else like this on the planet.
No,
And
no.
you can see this thing from the space shuttle.
Wow.
Uh, it's
Really?
it's
Wow.
pretty remarkable. It's
Uh,
pretty
well,
remarkable.
okay. So because of the I don't know. You've done some interesting brand relationships, like with Formula One racing,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they came in and kind of took it over. I mean, tell me about that. What happened there?
Well, that's a long-term relationship they cultivated with Sphere, and the track goes right around Sphere. There's a technically what they call a chicane that actually slows down the cars. It's a series of curves that you have to slow down for. So you actually slow down right in front of Sphere. So I
Oh,
mean, the perfect opportunity when people are filming the cars, there's a
yes.
Sphere right there. And so, and then all the wild fans that show up for F1 around the world 24, 25 times a year. They've baked that into Vegas now for, I don't know, 3 years, 10 years. I don't even know what the deal is. But
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty exciting. And we've been talking to them about cooperating and making something that on the inside that makes you feel like you're driving a car. What does it feel like? Why are, these guys are athletes who are the drivers. Well, why? So, maybe there's an opportunity where we get to demonstrate that on the inside
That's
Make
pretty
it
cool.
feel like you're driving a car, you're in a race, you're learning how to navigate those shifts without getting ill in your seat.
So, can you do? Have you done an actual like a like a dramatic scene that was a conversation between actors? I mean, can you pull that
We're just
off?
starting that. We're just
Okay.
starting that to figure that out. Because again, shooting with that camera, you
Yeah.
can control the size of what people are, but it's, in some ways, it's not the highest and best use just to have a conversation. It's got to be inside
Yeah.
of a little bit of a narrative and an experience that makes it interesting. So having a conversation on the side of a cliff is probably, a good
Yeah.
and interesting way to pursue this. So
Yeah.
we're looking for those opportunities to expand and test, and we're always looking for what can we do different. Um, but yeah, it's definitely on the radar. We're doing some stuff that's pretty promising, and we'll see what the next couple things do. We're coming out with the Wizard of Oz this summer, and
Wow.
then we have another. These are all announced. And then we have another extreme sports, uh,
Well, that'd be
five
interesting.
five athletes. So we've filmed Katie Hansen jumping from the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa in
Oh
Dubai.
man.
I don't know if you've
Yeah.
been there.
Yes, I
Um,
have. It's
and
horrifying.
she's jumped off that building more than any other human. She's the first woman to do it. And then we filmed that with Big Sky. And we have the guy on Free Solo climbing uh, a cliff in Jordan near Wadi Rum without ropes. And so we're putting the camera in some unique positions and make you feel like you're there with him. And it's going to make you grip onto the side of your seats, like, oh my gosh, my knees are working. I feel like I'm going to fall just because of what I'm experiencing.
Well, it's
So,
making me think, like with the mountain climber, where in the heck do you put the camera? Do you hang it by a rope? Surely there's nobody climbing along with him holding it handheld, is there?
or this it's too big.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
too
What do you?
big. So it's that rigging. So that's what we're experimenting with. We're figuring out the rigging to get that camera close. And you don't
Yeah,
want to, the guy's not, doesn't have a rope. You don't want
yeah,
to
I know.
endanger him. And
Yeah,
and part of the storyline is just to figure out these athletes that are, they're not like you and me. When you were
oh yeah,
younger, you were probably okay jumping off your neighbor's roof into the pool.
yeah,
You
yeah.
wouldn't do that now because you
No,
get hurt and die. Uh, these guys that do it, like this guy Alex in Free Solo, did it as a single guy. Well, now he's a dad and he's a wife, he has a wife and kids, and what's wrong with you?
yeah.
You know. So I think that's kind of
Oh,
the
man.
exploration a little bit. We have some award-winning filmmakers, Jimmy Chin and Chai Vassellery, that did Free Solo, and they're exploring that and figuring that out. It's pretty exciting.
So okay, so that's a good point. You've partnered with filmmakers all along. To Ari Handel, I think you did one with him.
Darren Aronofsky and Ari
Darren
Handel,
and
yeah.
Ari, yeah.
So they did the first one called Postcard from Earth, and it's not a deep three-act narrative. It's a thin narrative, light story, space travelers, and then it allowed us sort of this grand tour of the Earth. That's why we went to 27 or so countries. And
Okay,
yeah, but you need a director, you need a
yeah,
spine, you need something that pulls the story together, a backbone. So yeah, you want some kind of storyteller, director that's doing that, and we've partnered with some trying to find the top people that can help us experiment in this area. And that's what's fun to work. That's why it's fun to work there. It's fun to sort of experiment and
yeah.
see the light bulb go on.
I was going to say, how difficult is it for them, conventional filmmakers, no matter how talented, to suddenly learn this entire new universe? It's that the rules have changed. It's got to
Yeah,
take them a little ramp up time, right?
it does. And you got to use the camera. You got to
Yeah,
play with it. You got to try it, which, look, you and I in teaching filmmakers over the years, you tell them the same thing. Your first one's not going to work, but get out in the weekend, start shooting stuff, start
yeah,
making things. You learn, why didn't the story work? You got to play with the camera, you got to play with the storytelling, the editing, all of that. You learn by that experience. You're not going to win the first time out. You got to figure it
Yeah.
out. And so, the stakes are higher for us, and but the fun's in that exploration too. And look, we've got, Jim Dolan is willing to invest in this and believes in it, and he drives us, and it's productive, it's useful, it's fun, it's pushing all of us.
That's great. Well, it's a long way from being a history major at Berkeley, I can tell you that.
Oh man, I'll tell you, it's
Did you
exactly
ever
right.
think you'd end up here?
No. I mean, look, for a while, for 6 months, I was a computer science major, and I thought, that'll never work. That tells you what I knew back then. But now, here's the other thing that there's full of numbers, and you can read about it again in the Wall Street Journal and other places. But every 15 minutes that we capture on our camera is 32 terabytes of data. I mean, it's a fire hose to, again, put all those pixels up, 16K by 16K at 60 frames a second. It's a fire hose. And so half the problem is managing the data and the storage and figuring out how to make that stuff look good, which are traditional, color correcting and visual effects and all of that. But it gets complicated real fast. So we've got some really smart people working in Burbank to figure that stuff out, and it's pretty ingenious. It's pretty fun, and using all the latest tools in the marketplace. So, I feel I'm privileged to work there as long as they're willing to have me there and don't figure out I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, one last thought, and that is you mentioned it, but you do have a test facility in Burbank. For a long time, I wondered what this dome is at the, next to the Burbank airport. Before you told me, I had to ask you about it, and it's your test facility. And so you do everything there in a much smaller scale before you launch it at the big place, basically, right?
Yeah, the venue runs 24 hours a day up in Vegas because there's testing and maintenance, there's programming for the next show. So you can't get in there to see dailies, to see the work you have in progress. So it's the same resolution, but it's 1/4 scale. Okay. Now, it's no good for sound. It's no good for smell or haptics or any of that, because everything in the building is 1/4 scale, except for you. Your eyeballs are too far apart. So you don't experience it the same way. When you walk into the Vegas facility, it's like, oh man, this is gigantic. And the volume inside of the space is awe-inspiring. And then to present the images at the same time is spectacular. So we can tell the resolution. We have a similar product, not exactly the same LED product, but it shows us what it looks like. And then we do a lot of our work, 80-90% of it, and then we take it to Vegas to tweak it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, look, thank you for coming on. This is fantastic. I just wanted to bring, because I've had so many people ask me about it, and they know friends, and what's Ralph doing, and tell me about the Sphere. And so I wanted us just to have a conversation to fill them in on
it's fun.
It's the most technologically advanced thing I know in the entertainment business, right?
And it is, and we're trying to, we got to stay ahead, because people are going to figure it out, and there's lots of wannabe competitors. There's Cosm at the SoFi Stadium, which is sort of a big sports bar, but everybody's onto it and sort of trying to figure it out. And this, we're ahead of it, but you can't just rest on that. You got to keep innovating. So we've got teams that are looking further ahead on that, and that's kind of fun and exciting too. So as always, I feel like I'm privileged to be in the right spot, right time, and helping them make a better product and adding value, I hope. And we'll see where it goes.
Hey, thanks for being on. This is great. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. I know you're busy and you're traveling around the world on this stuff, but this is really helpful. So thank you very much. Well, I'm incredibly grateful that Ralph would come on. He's super busy, traveling all over the world, filming, managing a just a massive, massive operation. But I'm going to tell you something. To operate at the level a guy like Ralph works, you've got to be extraordinarily creative. And it's one of the reasons I wrote my book, Ideas on a Deadline, How to Be Creative When the Clock is Ticking. It's not just about creativity. It's about being creative under pressure. That's the single greatest thing you can do out there. Being creative under pressure, whether you're in the business world, the medical world, education, entertainment, media, advertising, whatever. Whatever you're doing, being creative under pressure is incredibly important. And it's really, I tell you, it's a stepping stone and a huge building block for your career to have that skill. So I would encourage you, if you don't have it already, get it. Ideas on a Deadline, How to Be Creative When the Clock is Ticking. It's going to be a super book to help your career advance to the next level. And as always, go see my blog at philcooke.com. Stay in touch with what I'm writing about, what we're doing. Check my other podcast episodes out. We've got some really interesting guests. So thanks for coming. Thanks for being a part of it. And also, by the way, check out influencelab.com. Our work training and teaching leaders to use media, particularly social media, video, more effectively around the world. Check it out. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Donate. Help us do that work. It's so important in this digital age that we live in. Influencelab.org, influencelab.com. I think we're there at both. So check it out. We'd love to see you. So until next week, stay tuned and we'll have another great guest next time around. Bye-bye.